Hi, I'm Capt Frank Lanier, a retired Coast Guard officer and SAMS Accredited Marine Surveyor with over 40 years of experience in the maritime and diving industry. I've amassed literally thousands of photos of all the bad things I've found on boats during my career as a Marine Surveyor. So what we're going to do today is take a look at some of my favorites. We're going to take a look at each picture. We're going to discuss why they're evil, and we're going to discuss what you need to do to correct it. So hop in, buckle up, keep your arms and legs inside the car at all times as we take a carnival-like ride tour through the cavalcade of owner-induced perversions that I like to call Captain Frank's Sea Chest of Horror. Sea Chest of Horror. Cracked composite or plastic thru-hulls are a common problem as a walk-in pretty much any boatyard will bear out. UV damage, ultraviolet light damage, is the main culprit, and while different brands of composite thru-hulls vary widely in their susceptibility to UV damage, some are so poorly made that I've seen them fail within a couple of years. Composite thru-hull fittings typically fail where the body meets the outer flange. This results in a crack or even total failure, both of which you can see in the photo here. The one on the left, you can see the crack is just starting, and the one on the right, the flange is completely broken and missing. Once the flange falls off, there's nothing left to keep that thru-hull in place, at which point the thru-hull can be pulled inside the boat. What this does, as you can see in this photo here, is that it reduces the boat's freeboard, which is the margin of protection it has against sinking. In this particular case, the thru-hull is roughly 3 inches above the boot stripe, which means it's probably around 5 inches above waterline. So what this has done is effectively reduced the boat's freeboard from a couple of feet to 5 inches, meaning the boat now only has to settle a few inches before it can start taking on water and possibly sinking. Even if the thru-hull is located well above waterline, if it fails, it can still be a huge problem. Take, for example, if the thru-hull is a discharge for the bilge pump. Well, and it pulls in to the hull, and the bilge pump starts pumping. It's just going to cycle water back into the boat as it pumps, and it keeps pumping and cycling until eventually the boat settles above the thru-hull that's failed, and then it sinks. In addition to cracks, another indication of UV damage to composite thru-hull is deterioration. And that typically manifests itself in a white chalky residue on the thru-hull flange itself. An easy way to check for that is to take a dark rag and wipe around the thru-hull. A white chalky residue on the rag indicates UV damage and that the thru-hull is starting to deteriorate. If you find one cracked composite thru-hull, chances are the remaining ones are the same age and similarly prone to failure. A good strategy at that point would be to implement a replacement schedule for the remaining composite thru-hulls to head off any future failures. It took a moment for me to realize exactly what it was that I didn't like about this thru-hull installation. At first, I thought it was the use of a gate valve. Gate valves are prone to failure and not typically recommended for use on thru-hulls below the waterline. And then I looked at it a little closer, and I realized, you know what? There's no hose clamps installed here. In fact, there's not even any hose. That thru-hull, seacock, and pipe on the other side are all joined together using foam pipe insulation and PVC glue. It goes without saying, although this picture proves that it needs to be said anyway, thru-hulls and seacocks need to utilize marine-grade hose suitable for use below the waterline, and the hose needs to be clamped at each end with marine-grade stainless steel or titanium hose clamps. What we have here is your basic leaky fuel valve. As any similarly conscientious boater would agree, you can't have all that fuel leaking in the bilge. So let's just set a bucket under it until we can figure this thing out. Oh, and never mind the live AC shore power cord splice connected with twist-on wire nuts, no less, that's soaking in that bucket full of fuel. The recommendation here to the somewhat surprised boat owner was 1, fix the valve so the fuel doesn't leak into the bilge. 2, get rid of the bucket full of fuel. And three, make a proper connection for the AC shore power cord. Just a quick note on connections. You should never use the twist-on wire nuts that you see here. You know, the kind you'll find at Home Depot, Lowe's, or any other residential big box stores. The reason being, wire nuts can fall off due to vibration you'd have on the boats. And when they do that, they leave a exposed, energized conductor that can shock someone or arc and spark while it's bouncing around and cause a fire or even an explosion.